This half hangs out into outer space. I have it numbered as what is that one? That is N. Hello, friends, and we are back with another episode for our Kaleidoscope piece along. So I want to take you through the next step, but I also want to talk about a few extra things creatively about this piece that are options if you wanted to put the time in. So I have all of our halves all numbered, and as you can see, we'll go up here, we'll show each one going down. Of course, we have all the rows A numbered in order, B, C, D, etc., etc., etc. I also want to make sure to talk a little bit, and I'm going to switch places with the camera. So I'm going to walk in front here, and we're going to go over here. And notice how this half hangs out into outer space. I have it numbered as what is that one? That is N4. So when we go up here to the N row, we have 1, 2. There is no 3, so we skip 3, and then 4. So I did want to do a little bit more of a reminder on how we handle that. Now I have everything set up here, and as we widen out a little bit so you can see a little more, let's talk a little bit about shrinkage. There is going to be some shrinkage when we start piecing things together. And that's something, of course, that you would have taken into account. We mentioned it while you were doing your layout. But there will be, because we have 1/4 inch seam allowances if you didn't overlap these a perfect 1/2 inch. So there is just going to be some shrinkage. We want to take that into account. And actually, there are a few places here where I kind of was counting on that based on where I could place some of my pieces. So let's go creative for just a minute. Like, I love how this is, and actually I have picked out, Mr. Ritchie, I'm sorry, could you hand me that little blue piece of velvet on the other side of the table there? So what I decided for my background to do, ta-da, is to use this amazing velvet, and I have a giant roll of it, and it is um, synthetic velvet, so it's going to hold up well. It's upholstery fabric, so it will hold up to washing, those sorts of things. But I decided to use this wonderful dark velvet that would match some of the darker portions here of this piece as a background. Don't know what shape I'm going to go, don't know all of that, but I know that that's a definite part of my equation. Will I make it the shape of the banner, or will I make it rectangle, and my quilting will kind of define the shape of the banner once it's all put together? I'm not sure yet. We'll see. Time will tell, and you'll be along for the ride. And I know you will be making those same decisions about your pieces. So, but let's take this a step further. I have some regrets. How my piece is set up, no regrets. My regrets is I wish I would have purchased 2 more of these panels, which are hard to find and near impossible to get. I've tried to look for them. And here is why. Here, I'm going to insert a little clip. I love to do thread painting. I love to do photorealistic thread painting, as you see here. Here I'm working on a kingfisher. And anyways, so as we come back to this, what I wish I would have done is gotten 2 more panels, and I would have loved to have thread painted the sheep and thread painted, I'm sorry, the lamb, and thread painted the lion, or even specific parts, like maybe the face and the mane, maybe the little bits of the body here, and then applicate it to the piece, and then where the grass is coming up around both of these beautiful creatures, I would have liked to have appliqued some blades of grass. And that would have taken it, of course, to a whole different level, museum level, which I would think um, from some of the pieces I've done like that before, but I didn't. So we're going to go with this. But I'm telling you that because that's something to think about as well. Sometimes we have a lot of people that have kind of a snooty prejudice against the panel quilts or panels in general. And there are ways that you can take them to a whole different artistic level for those that can't actually draw something freehand on their own. Panels are a great form of it's already there, it's already fabric, and we can go in and do some thread painting before we work it into our top. Now, I also want to add our Patreon channel has a whole series that we've started, and the bird, the kingfisher, is one of the first in that specific series that covers thread painting. You can do that on your home machine. You can do that on a long arm. You can do it on a mid arm. You can do it on any type of machine you want, as long as you can raise your presser foot or um, you have some sort of quilting foot on your machine. It's very, very easy to do. And the platform is really nice too. So if you want to go check out that type of art form, that's one of the projects that we do and series that we do over on our Patreon channel. So again, back to that. I wish I would have done that, but I didn't. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to complete the top. Um, but before I quilt it, once the top is completed, what I'm going to do is I am going to be on the hunt for two more of these panels because maybe I will go ahead and I will do some thread painting and I will create a whole different piece of art with this. So the options are there. Now, what's our next step? As is. So for your pieces or this piece, if I don't do that, my next step is this. Notice that I have everything numbered. I also want you to notice, take notice again as you work through yours, or if you have to reposition the tape, notice how, if we can squeeze in on one of these real close, notice how the tape again, and I know I said it when we were doing it in the previous video or tutorial, this is right dead set in the center. It's not near any seams. But I also want you to notice that it's right side up based on how it is. I don't want to just put the pieces of tape helter-skelter, upside down, sideways, all of that. I want them all to be right up because what we're going to do next is we're going to start with the first row and we're going to stack them. And we're going to stack them in order, 1 to 2, all the way down. And then I'm going to do stack 2. So you want to have, you want to have these binder clips, and I should have caught that. Boy, I'm getting old. You want to have these binder clips like these. These are handy. It's nice to have a box of these around, you know, from the office store, or you can order them online. So I'm going to start, I'm going to do row by row, and I'm going to make sure that I stack them in order. 1 on top, 2 underneath. Make sure that you don't disturb the tape. Tape is key. When I used painter's tape the first time, I definitely found out how much I appreciate masking tape. It holds longer, it doesn't leave a residue, and frankly, I find it less expensive. Okay. And if I have misplaced any of these or goofed them up as I'm putting them in my hand, that's another reason we want to have all these numbered. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to stack them, and that's where your clip comes into place. So I have small clips, I also have larger clips. So each one of the rows is going to get a smaller clip, and I just close it. It's all in order, and it's going to be ready. I'm going to go through, and I'm going to do that with all of these. When I come to the areas, let's go over here, where I have a loosey-goose, I'm still going to have that be in order. So it would be 1, 2, and then 4, and then skip all the way down to 7, 8, 9. So again, wherever it skips, we still stack them. We won't be sewing them together in the row. They'll be alone. which we're going to show at the machine in our next clip here at this episode. So that's the first process you're going to do. If your studio, now my board is here at our long arm studio, and my sewing studio and filming studio is over in another location where we actually are going to do the sewing. So because of that, I have to do all of them. But obviously, most of you have your studios right in your own home. And so for you, let me reposition this. For you, you can just do one row at a time, sew them together, hang them back up. One row at a time, da, 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 da. I'm going to actually go so all the rows together, come back here, and then put them up. Next episode, next week, is going to be sewing the completed rows together. We'll talk about that, and I've got some great tips for that. But right now, we're simply creating rows. All right, so that's what we have so far. You have your homework. Go ahead and do that, and in just a minute, I will meet you over at the other studio. Okay, so we are all set. We are back here at the studio for sewing and showing. And what I want to do is go over a few things that I think are really important. Now, of course, we have things laid out. If we go down to the table, what I have, this is B row. And then, of course, we have A row up on top. Now, I've already pulled them out and put them in order. A1 to 2, and I do this in pairs. A1 to 2, A3 to 4, A5 to 6. And notice again how important it is to make sure that your letters are all in the same direction. That way you're not going to lose control of which direction they're going to be sewn in. You want to make sure to keep them consistent. So I have 1, 2, 3 full sets because we had 7 halves in row A, and then I have a lone one, which we'll get to when we sew our pairs together. The first thing we're going to do is to sew our pairs together. Now, there are those of you who are going to go over and say, hey, I can just put them together, slap it on my machine and run it through, and there are folks that can do that fantastically, and that's wonderful. God bless you. I am not that person, and most of us are not that person. Take my word for that. I'm actually a surface quilter. I see the quilts when they're done. So we want to make sure that we get them as cleanly pieced as we can, because with this type of a quilt, it's very easy to get things stretched out of shape, and we don't want to do that. So before we actually talk about doing the gluing, we are going to pre-glue. At least that's how I like to do it. So again, I am using the acorn glue, but let me say something to everybody. Let's go down to the table. I have the acorn glue here. I have my little guy that I actually use, and then I have my refiller. Now, sometimes if I don't have this little guy, I just use my refiller. The nozzle is fine, and it works okay. I just have to be very, very cautious. But I do like having this little guy. Let me set that aside. You want to remember, if you don't have that and you want to get going, or you live in a place in which you cannot get that, then Elmer's school glue will be fine. We want to make sure, though, that it's Elmer's school glue. We do not want to use Elmer's glue all. So that being said, of course, this is water soluble. It will wash out. What's the comparison between the two? So I've tested them, and this works, right? If I didn't have this, this is what I would use. But I will tell you, when you sew, it just is a little smoother, and it has less body, less starch to it than the actual school glue. It's not as stiff to run it through your machine. Again, it washes out. It's not a big deal. It's not like it's hard caked on glue when you're sewing it. It's just that I tend to really like this. But this will work. All right. Now, let me also share this. One of the questions that I get with this is refill, regular. A lot of people have an issue with doing the filler upper, and I totally get it, because I have days when I forget about it and I haven't had to refill in a while, where it takes me a second to get good and not waste a lot of my refill because it comes and bubbles back out. There is a specific way that I find that I like to do this. And here, I will show you. Let's go down to the table. Also, when I'm having a day when I'm using this, I undo the lid and I take out the big ring, and that way, as I'm using it, I can keep covering it, but I don't have this guy flopping around on the bottle all the time. So, I've opened up this guy. Let me squeeze you in a little bit. Which it's a great hole in the little applicator. I actually took a little bit more of a tip off of my refill guy because I know that I'm definitely going to have this as a refill. So I made sure to make a bigger hole, but not so big that I couldn't put my lid back on. Okay, so oops, got a little bit on me. Okay, so now one of the things I do is I tip this sideways. So when I tip it sideways, I then take my nozzle and I put it in. It's instinct for a lot of us to put it all the way down and squeeze. You're not going to get it, and it won't go down, and then it'll bubble up around the edge. So you just kind of put it in there with this sideways and just squeeze. See, it still has a tendency to do that. Do you see what's happening here? And so that's when I know that what I'm doing is I'm squeezing too fast. So I go in sideways, I leave a lot of an air, and I just go slower. Let's face on. So as I go slower, I can see it going down in, right, without making as much of a mess as it possibly could. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead so I don't glue it shut. Wipe the edge of that. Nice and clean. That's why I have a paper towel by my work. And trust me, around here, getting an extra piece of paper towel, it's like trying to get a bar of gold from Fort Knox. You know, we got the paper towel police here in my
Before
studio.
you get a new one, I gotta have the old one.
Yeah. So we can wash this and you can dry it. How's that? All right, now.
They're bounty.
They're bounty with Quicker Picker. All right, so
not
now.
Sponsored.
Oh, no, we're not sponsored. Alleged, the Quilt Picker, the Quicker Picker. Everything has to be alleged now, right? So now we're going to close the lid. I've got glue in there now. I'm ready. How much glue do I have? I have a nice amount. So, ooh, and be careful. By the way, I did that before when we got to the studio, before we started. I pushed my little needle in my bottle down in there. So I had to empty the whole bottle to get the needle out, and then find a little pair of needle nose pliers to put that little guy back in there. Don't even know if I need it, but I think having that is a good way to go. So, okay. I'm going to set that aside. So hopefully that answers a little question about how to refill your bottle. Now what I'm going to do is, let's go back down to the table, if we could. And iron is on, iron is hot, no steam. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to pull that down. So I've pulled down, let me out for just a second. I grabbed the first two, brought them over. You can see A1, A2, both facing up, going the proper way. Now I'm going to zoom back in. Okay, so the whole point is this. I want to go ahead, do a glue, and have our pairs all set up and stacked so that I can go ahead and chain piece that first row. So what I'm going to do is line this up. Now here's a little tip for you, and I want to go in a little tighter. And most of you already know this, but I also have friends who are watching these tutorials and doing their first quilts and dealing with their first Kaleidoscope block. Do you see the tail here? There's a reason I don't cut those off. And that reason is this, because now I can look at this, because when you're an inexperienced piecer, what you'll do is you slap these down, glue them together, and you'll actually take one like to the edge. If all these are trimmed off, you'll take it to the edge, but then when you sew it, remember, you're a 1/4 inch in, so you're off, and then when you open it up, it's going to be cattywampus, right? And so, again, the reason that I like to leave my dog ears on that is because I take where the one dog ear is sticking out, I go to one of my clean edges here, and I know that this is going to be even with this. And when I actually even it with that, I have a 1/4 inch out here, and I have a 1/4 inch out here. My seam is going to be right here. So when I sew that seam, and then when I open it up, and you'll see that, I'll show you that once I show you the first glue, you'll see that when it opens perfectly straight all the way down the row. We want to remember, that's why we keep our dog ears in place. Okay, so got my glue right there on that dog ear. Perfect line with these bottles. You know, these can be a little hard to squeeze. Like I said, you can use your refill bottle. Some days my arthritis gets a little much. Okay, there we go. Nice amount, not too much. I'm going to take this, and of course we have our dog ear right there. I'm going to line that up with the tip there. Go down, make sure not to stretch because we are on bias. That is also the gift of this glue. You can piece, and you know that it's going to stay in place without stretching out the bias. So you can see we've got a 1/4 inch here, and this one's hanging over the edge 1/4 inch. So our sewing line is going to be perfect. I've got my iron preheated. I press, I do not iron. Bring that in a little bit. Now also we want to remember that before we sew our pairs together, every time we finish sewing these, and I will show you this again at the machine, but it's just a reminder, now we have that glue down, and do you see, once we press this, however we choose to press it, we're going to have that perfect line from there to there. It's nice and straight. There's not like zigzaggy in and out, and that's what we want. Now at that point, I want to make sure once we get our seams pressed, we're going to pop that glue open to the seam. One of the things that this does is this. As I do this, I have to make a decision row by row which way I'm going to press my seam. Am I going to press it up or am I going to press it down? And that will mean that for that whole row, if I start down on the first one, all of them get pressed down. When I go to B row, all of those get pressed up. That way it's going to be easier here in the center to get rid of some of that fullness. Now because of the glue, we don't get the option really of opening our seams and pressing them open after we sew. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that glue is nice and held until its first wash. Still feels like fabric, it doesn't feel hard, but it's going to hold. And so I'm not going to take the extra time to open those seams. As long as I press one down, one up, and then of course at the end of the row you'll see that I'm going to snip a little bit more excess where that little nip is right there, just like we did on the part when we're piecing these three together. You'll see that that's going to go together row by row really well. Okay, so I'm going to do all of these, close that, make a pile, grab my A and 3. I'm going to take a look at it at this in this particular one. Because of the way that I piece the 3 together, this tip you can see is going to line up with that tip.
Needs to push it up a little bit. There you go.
Sorry about that. Okay, so on this one we're going to see that again, you could be tempted to lay this like this, put your line of glue here, and do this. That's going to mean that you're going to be off. We want to remember, for my new folks, this is the dog ear. That's where I'm going to go. And that is a little bit off the reservation. It's not quite in that 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch. So I know I'm going to have to pop that seam after I sew it. Now I'm going to line that up so these tips match. I'm going to lay that down, make sure I'm not stretching anything. Put those down. Got a nice, I do a visual. Yep, that's a nice tip right there. That's 1/4 inch. This is a 1/4 inch. Press, not iron. I don't want to distort that seam. I also want to stay near the edge. I don't want to just go here because remember, we have tape here. And masking tape has glue on it, and you don't want to heat that glue. So now when I open that up after we sew, we see that that lines up pretty darn good. Okay, so that's how we're going to continue. They're not all going to be perfect. And that's one of the things that I want to say to everybody. I didn't do it with this one. I do it with half of the quilts like this that I make. And what is that? We talked about it in an early video, and I told you to do it, but I did not do it. If you want to face on me, Mr. Ritchie. Okay, I had to grab my straight ruler with my measurements. Again, one of the things, if you have forgotten this step, and again, I'm not going to do it because I know I'm going to be able to wing it pretty good, is this. I would bring this down here on a cutting board. Let's go up there, just like that. And what I would do, you see where this point right here, where they all come together, and in from the center, the middle one, goes in 1/4 to a little over a scant of 1/4. Now when it goes over a scant of 1/4, that's just part of the piecing process. Nobody's perfect, that's going to happen. What you can do, and what I do sometimes, is I will take my ruler, I will you see that point right there? I will slide that, keep it straight and parallel to the 1/4 inch and cut off any little bit of scant fabric that's there. And there is a little sliver. I'm going to make that work without any distortion or anything like that, but it's not a bad step for you to do. And if you are going to do that, I would do that before you would piece them together. Again, I'm not going to do mine. I sometimes do it, sometimes don't. So again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to go ahead and glue, just like I've shown you, all of these pieces all in order. Okay. So the thing I want to say is this. So I'm all set, right? And I'll tell you what, sometimes my dyslexia can kick in and I really have to be aware of this. Look, 6, 5. It's got to be 5, 6. Now a little tip, because when I made these, what I did with all of these, if you remember correctly, is when we had them laying out before we pieced the 3 together, I said the left side under, we press up, the right side under, we press down, right? That is important because that does give us that all-important dog ear guide that I was just talking about when we sew these together. And that, again, that's you're always going to have that as long as you do that clockwise under press. Now, the point is, as well, if I oops, and I'm having a dyslexic moment, what you're going to see is there's no dog ear sticking out anywhere. And when you see that, as long as you've done your piecing consistently, you know, oh, ooh, let me look, oh, 6, 5. No, it's got to be 5, 6, right? It's just an extra little warning to not mispiece your pieces. So we've got our tail, tail,
Tail of the dyslexic quilter.
tail of the dyslexic quilter. Yes, indeedy. That would be me on occasion. But I have enough safeties in place. Okay, so now I'll take it. tail to tail. It's important not to stretch, easy to stretch. Now with this one, what you're going to see is I have the 1/4 inch here by fluke. So every once in a while, as long as you have that 1/4 inch, you're doing good. Press and continue completing your row. Now I tend to like to do one row at a time, and perfect line up. Got that one piled up. My single, which is the end of the row, I'm going to save that. I got to come back here to press anyways. So what we're going to do now is we are going to head over to the machine. I'm going to chain piece the pieces from row A, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we are at the machine and we are ready to go. And just for the detail stuff, I am using a Juki TL18 QVP semi-industrial because it rocks. It is one of my 20 machines that I love, and I love 18 more. And I am using Isocord 40 weight polyester thread to piece because my Juki loves it, and I love the Isocord, and I use it all the time for years and years and years, and it works fantastic through this machine. Not all of my machines love the Isocord, so you find what works for you. I also, when I want to use cotton for something, I definitely like, it's the Filtech Caro Quilter, or Cairo cotton, and I do love that one for piecing as well. I also love Superior's Masterpiece. That is another one that I really like. I typically don't use the generics that you would get at the local sewing shop anymore. I remember I used to use Gutermann. It became inconsistent for a while, but who knows? It might be in a good phase now. And I've also used Mettler, but frankly, I love using my cones because it saves me a lot of money, and this machine happens to run the large cones, and even if I didn't have a machine that would hold the large cones, I can always get a large cone holder, and it's just so much more smart financially to purchase your thread and use thread that way. Okay, so I am on 1.8 stitch length, and there we go. I've got my 1/4 inch system all set up. Mine's a little different. I do have a 1/4 inch foot, but I am actually using a different foot with a 1/4 inch, if we go to the side here, magnetic seam guide, and I'm using the big long one. I love that one. We also have, you can get one of the more narrow ones. Those are awesome too. And I have mine taped in place because I like that. It's just in place. It's not going to slide. And I do like a seam guide. I don't like to have to police everything as I'm working my way through. All right, now as you can see from overhead, I have everything all set up. I've got my pieces all stacked up and ready to be sewn for that row. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go over here. Now we're going to do some sewing. So as I get that in there, let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. I do not have a leader piece of fabric, and I'm not going to run into the other room and grab it, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start a little bit further up, drop my needle down, do my stitches forward, do my stitches backward. Now I know that I'm good and locked in. And I always usually like to start with a leader piece of fabric just so I don't get anything weird. Now, here's the thing. I've got a dog ear right here that's kind of getting in the way, so I just kind of flip that up because I kind of want to keep that in place for what I'm going to do later. And it met perfectly right in the crotch there, so I know that I'm going to have a nice straight row. I'm going to do my lock stitch, and I do a beginning and end lock stitch, and then I'm going to go ahead excuse me, grab my next piece, line that up, and continue to do my string piecing all the way through, chain piecing. Now again, you can set up all the rows and just do all the rows, but I like to do it one row at a time. That way I know that I'm going to catch things as I go. Let it feed through, don't stretch. That's another nice thing about having the seam guide here. Okay, so now I have the 3 doubles. I'm going to take these back over to the table, and then we will go ahead and press them out, re-glue, and I'll show you that process so that we can get one full row done, and then you are going to do that with all of your rows with a couple of caveats that I'll talk about towards the end here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got our doubles all set up. Now remember, we want to make sure that all of the seams go either up or down. So I'm going to look. I'm going to look at what works best for my first guy, and I feel that 1 and 2 up is best. Oh, I also want to show you this. Remember what I said. We had glue here. So before we press, we want to make sure just to give a little pop in case any of that glue is holding that seam closed. Okay, so I'm going to grab this, and I see that what I like is to have it go up. That tends to work better on that one. I'm going to flip it over, start here. Again, I'm going to watch my tape. Okay, that's good. Nice and flat, and you can see now it's nice and straight. I have one dog ear to use if I need it down the road. Depending on how you piece your rows together, you might need it, you might not. Okay, so now I'm going to set that aside, and I'll complete that with all of these. And remember, we're facing the pressing between the half blocks up. So I'm going to flip that over. Again, if you want to. Sometimes I forget. I'll set my seam, which is always smart. And then double check 3 and 4, and I pressed double check up. But that means that on row B, I'm going to be pressing them all down. And as long as you remember that, as you work your way through, then you are good to go. Up, down, all the way through the rows. Okay, give that a little press, hold, good to go. Next one, up, 5, 6, all is well there. Set my seam like a good boy. Try to flip it the right way. Then go ahead, close it, grab it here, press open. Little glue to snap open, which I didn't catch. There we go. Now we got it. So that is our process for this. Now, the next thing we're going to do, once we have that, I have all of these in order, plus we have our oddball at the bottom, which is actually attached to that. These are numbered in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, what if it would have been towards the middle of the, not of the row, but of the frame itself, like maybe A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H on the way in, and there might be a single that's going to be like that off the reservation, right? We want to remember that that one we leave singly until we go to piece the whole frame, and that's something we're going to do next the next episode. But let me share at this point again, we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then our 7. So I'm going to follow the same process. Remember, I kept my dog ear, and so I'm going to glue from there to there, do my folding, pressing, same thing here. I've got my dog ear here, glue here, press, fold, do the exact same thing we did with our singles. And then of course down at the bottom here, we've got this little guy, and which is our 7, and we're going to repeat the same process. Press that to that one. So then we'll have our first row. Alright, so if we come face on, so now we're going to go through and we're going to do each and every row, sew it, take it to your design wall, or if you're not in the same place, you're at a retreat somewhere piecing these, just keep them in order by row, right? And then we'll, at the next episode, what we'll do is we will go through and I'll show you how I like to go ahead and sew my rows together. So they will go together cohesively, and then we'll talk about actually auditioning them, of course, within the panel as a whole frame. And then the next episode after that will be, okay, now what? Now we have this frame, we have a panel, we don't have any borders yet. How will I attach my frame to my complete panel and make it look the way that it needs to look? And there are some tips with that. We want to make sure we don't have any raw edges. We're not applicating something. We're actually going to do this the correct way, in my opinion. All right, everybody, so I hope you enjoyed that. I know you've got some stuff to do now with your next section. I'm thinking next week will be the next part, but I don't know. It could be 2 weeks. It definitely won't be any longer than 2 weeks. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed. As always, I love having you in the studio. I love spending my time with you. I love that we're working on these projects together. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the neighbor next to you. All right, everybody. Bye.